Hey guys, hope you're all well and staying safe. Yes, thoughts go out to those of you in America, particularly people involved in the riots or if you've been caught up with it. But yeah, sympathies because it's a really tough time. And just a crazy world we're living in at the moment with one thing or the other, and I just hope things settle down and get better for you guys soon. So I hope, yeah, I can provide at least a little bit of a distraction from the harshness with this video. And this is going to be my review of Killing Eve, Season 3, Episode 6. And the episode is called End of Game. So yes, so we're back in London for this episode, or part of the episode anyway. In typical Killing Eve fashion, it does sort of jump around a couple of different places, but a lot of it is set in London anyway, so we're sort of back to like focusing on the main case, the main plot of the season. And certainly this season there's been a lot more to like keep up with, I think, than previous seasons. I think you've got extra characters, you've got extra sort of subplots, and I think part of that is just because they've been more conscious to kind of keep Eve and Villeneuve apart this time. So in this episode you've sort of got basically three sort of like separate plots, which obviously like have a connection, but you've got the side of things with Eve, who's kind of getting closer to her investigation and maybe who was involved in killing Kenny, but also who attacked Nico last week, or the week before actually, sorry, in Poland, which we already know of course was Dasha. You've got the Caroline side of thing, who's investigating what happened to Kenny. And you also have Villeneuve back in London, and her kind of direction, her sort of new direction, which involves Constantine. So I'll start off with Eve actually, because Dasha, when she attacked Nico, did leave some pictures, some photos of the attack, and they have those photos, but they also have like the photos of when Vilna took out the like the wife or the ex-widow, whichever it was, of the accountant. So they've got those photos to study. But actually, before we get to that, there's like a small bit with Nico and Eve in like a London hospital. I assume it was in London actually, I don't know for sure, but so we find out in the opening scene that he's not actually dead, he's in very critical condition, but he did survive, and the main thing is that he got a very nasty pitchfork through the throat, so he basically can't breathe, and he has to communicate through one of those like electric type talking machines, one of those boxes, and as you can imagine, he's still not best pleased with Eve. So Eve's at his bedside, and like through the electronic voice, he basically tells her to piss off forever, to leave him alone. So very sort of frank and brutal, and it kind of sums up the show in a way, because it's a very painful moment, but it's also kind of funny just because of him choosing the phrase piss off through this electronic machine. But they have it straight to the point, very blunt, and yeah, I guess just when Eve thought she might have been closer to like repatching things with Nico and their relationship, it's dealt another blow for her. So that's pretty terrible. And we see Eve really selling the effects of that. So as I was saying, she's back at the newspaper offices. They're looking through these photos. Now, of course, in the previous episode, they've sort of they trace like this really old sort of sporting type injury, which were sort of similar to like some of the deaths they've seen in these photos. And it links back like many decades. And she first hears about this character of Dasha, who, as it happens, has like a sporting background. She's like a gymnast, or was a gymnast, as we've seen in the flashbacks. And it sort of turns out, actually, whether intentionally or just by accident, then Dasha kind of probably inadvertently framed Villeneuve because she attacked Nico in the style of like Villeneuve, and I think they leave this quite ambiguous. I think it's probably because just them being like mother and daughter, or at least she's the one who's raised her. She's not her biological mother. But I think partly because of that, then that's why she's kind of like using that style as a way to sort of kill, or she intended to kill Nico, I'm pretty sure, as like an homage. But she's very sly, Dasher, so it could be a tactic to kind of make it look like Villeneuve did it rather than her. But anyway, Eve isn't sold on the fact then it was Villeneuve. And the reason she's not sold is she says to the guy, she says, well, if it was her, then Nico would be dead. There would be no mistake. And that's a fair point, because from what we've seen of Villeneuve in the series, she's very, very clinical, very brutal. I guess 9 times out of 10, if she intends you to be dead, you will be dead. So that's interesting. That's almost like hinting that then Dasha maybe is not so like clinical or not so efficient at killing, which probably makes sense because as far as we know, she's had less experience of it. And of course, the intention was just to like distract Eve and take her out of the picture for a while, because she had the pressure from highs up to kind of move her and Villeneuve like further apart from each other. So Eve doesn't believe it's Villeneuve for those reasons. So she kind of has her eye on Dasha, who she finds out. There's a glorious scene actually when Eve brutally takes it out on the vending machine like a rage, and she's trying to get a muffin as well, which is pretty cool. A vending machine with muffins. I'm not sure I've ever seen that. I've seen similar like cakes and that in a vending machine, but I'm not sure I've ever seen one with a muffin. So that really is rolling out the boat. But yeah, just a great like sort of visual scene of her like just shaking the vending machine, because it's that old classic thing of the thing getting stuck or not working, and it's just a way for her to vent her anger. So she obviously believes that Dash is involved, so she goes to Caroline, who of course has like contacts with like the KGB. And obviously she tells Eve, she is like a KGB agent. And I think part of part of this scene. Well, there's two reasons for it. One, she tells Eve where she can probably find her, and that's Barcelona, because she says, well, she's moving into the Barcelona area, and she's. I think another side to this is then she's kind of plotting to like move Villeneuve out, because at the start of series 3, Villeneuve was like based in Barcelona, so it's a way to kind of move her out of that territory. So she tells Eve that's probably where she can find Dasher, and it's also, I think, to sell the threat of Dasher, because in this scene Caroline says, you know, be careful, Eve, because she killed one of her own. So it's that old thing. I mean, if she'll do that, then that really shows how dangerous she is. So near the end of the episode, Eve catches up with Dasher in Barcelona, and at a bowling alley of all places. So it sort of keeps up with the sporting theme. She's in like one of those striking like red sort of like jumpsuits, whatever you call them, red. I guess it's like a tracksuit, and she's bowling. And before she talks to Eve, she's playing like cat and mouse with her. Says, "Come on, let's bowl." And this being the unconventional sort of show, then of course they bowl with each other. It's sort of like this playful thing back and forth before she'll tell Eve anything. And in the end, she doesn't really tell her that much. She kind of plays it very coy and is almost sort of taunting Eve, because she's kind of like smirks and says, "You really think you know what's going on?" And I think Dasher takes some glee, because she kind of says, as Eve is like walking out, you'll never get to Villeneuve now, because that's the whole deal. Then they've worked this whole scheme so that they're like in separate places, and so Eve at this point doesn't have any idea where Villeneuve is. So that's all pretty solid, interesting stuff. We also get little bits with Caroline in this episode, who I do enjoy as a character, and we've had some good stuff with her this season, actually, as she's really some quite meaty stuff because of the death of Kenny, of course. And they've come to the conclusion that it wasn't the accountant. I think it was Roger or Whitaker or something like that. Oh, Kruger, that's it. That them were like the actual one they wanted. Like, that seems to be a dead end. So they figured out it was someone else. And Caroline is like secretly keeping up like the search for information about Kenny, what exactly happened there. And she talks to like one of her like former contacts, and he has like the phone records, like the mobile phone records for like the day before Kenny was found dead. And it turns out then he had calls from a Russian number, like calls back and forth, I think, which is obviously a bit suspicious. But the other detail in that conversation is then the guy, I think his name's Simon. Simon's, I think, her like superior now at the MI5, but Mike, I think the guy's name is. He says to her, I actually sent this to you over a week ago, and I contacted you because you hadn't responded. and that's like quite an important detail because it kind of suggests then there's a reason why they kept it from Caroline, why Mike had to contact her so that she could get it. And so she goes to like the new guy, like running her old job operations at MI5. Simon, I think his name is, and it's like this whole thing because you've got these two like really good character actors just bouncing off each other, and from the beginning when he showed up, he's a very sort of murky character, because he's very good at like playing deadpan and quite like an oddball sort of character, and this being the sort of show it is, I think even when he appeared to be quite sympathetic, I think there was something quite sort of jammy about that. But she questions him, saying, you know, why did you keep the phone records from me, or why didn't you tell me this? What are you trying to hide? And he doesn't really give her like a straight answer. But there's just a funny exchange where they both say, I don't trust you," sort of thing. Because she asks him, I think, well, should I really trust you? And he's actually like appears to be honest and says, well, no, of course you shouldn't. No one trusts anyone here. That's why we work at this job, which is this just funny but also kind of weird, like matter of fact sort of strange. Or exchange, sorry. So you kind of feel there's going to be more from the Simon character. But the other thing with Caroline in this episode is that she talks to Constantine. She's basically figured out that Constantine was the Russian guy, the Russian number that Kenny spoke to before he died. And it's kind of this red sort of herring, because I think, you know, it's probably Constantine had nothing to do with Kenny's death, or certainly it wasn't him who did it. But yeah, it proves a red herring, but it does uncover quite another interesting little nugget, which is Caroline asks him, obviously, what did he want? And Constance says, well, he wanted to know who his father was, as in his real father. So it suggests then Kenny never knew his birth father. And like, is it me? And Caroline says, well, what did you tell him? And he says, well, I said I didn't know. So he asked Constantine if he was his birth father, and Constantine apparently said to Kenny, I don't know. And that's kind of it, but it's just again opening up these kind of like mystery type elements, because it's obviously not out of the realm of possibility then Constantine could be Kenny's father, because of course he has this history with Caroline. I'm not actually sure if they've ever revealed then it is like a romantic history. I don't know, they might have done back in season 1, I'm not sure, but certainly that's always been like suggested then it could have been. So yeah, I guess it could well be plausible and he was Kenny's birth father, but yeah, I guess it's quite like realistic than Caroline wouldn't want him to know that sort of thing, even though it's sort of thing he should know. And there's another little scene with Caroline and Natalie, her daughter, who's obviously been visiting because actually there's this nice little like sort of twist here where Caroline actually finds out about Constantine like meeting up with Natalie and talking, because I can't remember the exact line, but she when she first poses the question to Constantine about like what did you say to I can't remember what it was, because she's about to say son, and I think he jumps in and he actually says she contacted me or something. And at the time I sort of thought, well, why is he saying she when they're talking about Kenny? But it actually, because Constantine thinks that Caroline knows about the meeting with Natalie, so it tips her off. Then he's like met and has seen her daughter. So that becomes a thing in the scene with Caroline and Natalie, where when she asks, what was Constantine talking to you about? And Natalie doesn't say anything, but they do have like this sort of quite cathartic moment. It's kind of sad and cathartic at the same time, because it sort of gets to the heart of why they're not very close. And Caroline just has this excuse where she says then she was always closer to Kenny, like they always had more in common, and that Natalie was always closer to the father. They had like more in common. So it's kind of consistent with Caroline, I guess, and she would have this very isolated sort of approach and this sort of honest sort of feeling, but yeah, kind of quite stubborn in the sense that she's unwilling to like make the effort to be close with her children, even if they may or may not be similar. I think what she's getting at though in the scene is that because Kenny had an interest in like the government side of things and investigation, and probably Natalie didn't, and that's probably the reason her and Kenny clicked. So it's kind of this quite powerful sort of storyline where even though Kenny's now dead and no longer around, Caroline is still like focusing all her energy on him and still is closer to him even though he's no longer around, and as a result there's still this strain, there's still this distance between her and Natalie. So it's just a small scene, but it's actually quite nicely played. And so that takes us on to Villeneuve in this episode, and the first scene we see her in is that she actually meets up with, I forget the character's name, but it's this higher up. It's this woman who we saw with Dasher previously and who was getting concerned about the way things had developed. And she's the one who pressured Dasher into doing something about the Eve situation. So Villeneuve meets her, and it's this quite glamorous meeting. I really like this character actually. I think the actress has real presence, but she's quite flirtatious with Villeneuve, so it suggests maybe she could be like gay or at least bi, and she does flirt with her definitely, and she like plies her with champagne. And she makes a big deal saying, I've been I've wanted to meet you for a long time. And she says her request has been approved, and I think it was mentioned a couple of episodes about just maybe giving her more freedom, like extra sort of like money and stuff like that. But the downside is that she still gets assigned to kill people. It's still kind of the same setup, except the fact that she just has more freedom to like move about, I think, and just extra expenses. But it's still the same kind of gigs where she is given like an assignment and has to go undercover. And this really frustrates Villeneuve, because she, certainly from Dasher, was given the impression that she would have a bit more power, a bit more say in things, and that she could actually be her own boss. And that certainly doesn't seem to be the case. So she mentions, "Oh, this is bullshit," and we see like the word bullshit in big letters on the screen. And it's actually a nice continuity thing, because later on, when she's on the assignment, like bullshit actually comes up in big letters in there as well. And she goes undercover to like take out this politician, and we see her like pretend to be his hairdresser basically, and that's kind of how she kills him when he's in the chair. But there is a resistance. He kind of fights back and he gets a cut in on her. And I guess the point of the scene is saying that she's still got her mind elsewhere. She's still kind of not totally focused, and that actually leads her back into the arms of Dasher at the end, because Dasher comes in, and it's obviously this big thing, because it wasn't like a totally clean kill, which it normally would be, but it gives Dasher the power back in a way, because the big thing with Vilna in this episode is that she wants to get out of the business, so to speak. She wants to escape with Constantine, who himself is planning to move away and have a change of life. So we have this kind of typical like Vilna scene where she's just stirring shit with like I keep saying Martin, Constantine and his daughter at like a hockey game. And Constantine's like doing his best to be close to his daughter, who he's not had the best relationship with because of his job. And this is quite, sort of like nicely symbolic, because of course him and Villeneuve have this sort of father-daughter type relationship, so it kind of mirrors this, and the fact that he's now trying to reach out to his actual daughter, and yet Villeneuve is there and she's kind of like mucking about and almost without really meaning to like come in between them. But they seem to agree, Constantine, say, yeah, you can come with me, we can go on, we can travel together almost, but we have to do it my way, we have to do it discreetly. So that's why Villeneuve like goes back and kind of like goes on this assignment. And the plan is that then she'll like after the assignment or something, she'll meet up with Martin, I think in Russia or somewhere like that. But because of what happens on the assignment and then Dasher coming to meet her, that probably looks like it's not going to happen, because Constantine like leaves Villeneuve a message and kind of says, yeah, I've left now, I'm ready, I'm waiting for you. So it looks like a spanner has been thrown into the works, because of course as one of the main characters she can't really be leaving the show really, or going off with Constantine. But the twisted like irony at the end is that Villeneuve has been like talking to Martin again, Constantine's daughter, who actually like hates her but slowly warms to her, because Villeneuve encourages her to embrace her dark side. And again, stirring up trouble as she does, she actually encourages her to like kill her stepfather, And lo and behold, she goes and does it at the end. The final scene is her running over her stepfather brutally. And I mean, it's all kind of rushed, but whatever, it works for what they're trying to do. It's like Villeneuve's twisted inference again, and Constantine's actually there. He sees it and he's like, "Oh my God, what's happening here?" And he's gonna blame himself, I guess, but I guess it's gonna lead to him maybe turning against Villeneuve because of her influence on the daughter. But yeah, it was certainly quite a way to end the episode. So that's my review of episode 6 of season 3 of Killing Eve. Plenty to talk about once again. Plenty going on this season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get me up on Twitter at Keith Beard. And I'll be back with more TV reviews soon. See you guys later. Goodbye.